So my name is Tricia Hart, and I am a parish minister most of the time. And I just realized today that I spend very little time in Metro New York. Not because I don't like you, but because I spend lots of time in New England and in Joseph Priestley, in Surge. In the last several years, I've been serving churches in Pennsylvania. So, and I have never before today been to Shelter Rock. So this is a big deal for me, and I'm glad to be here with all of you. I will tell you that the reason that Andrea invited me to do this session on stewardship is because she and I were sitting on the porch on Star Island in rocking chairs, ranting in that happy way that one does about the world and Unitarian Universalism and our work, and for me, stewardship and money and churches in particular. And she kind of called my bluff in the way that good district executives do and said, would you like to come to Shelter Rock to Leadership Day? So I'm glad to be here. This is not a canned workshop. This has never happened before. It may never happen again, but it also might. I come to my passion about stewardship and money because for 12 years, in addition to being a parish minister, I have been a stewardship consultant to our congregations. So what that means, there are chairs over here too if you'd like to get closer. Or if you want to be out there, that's fine, as long as you can see. Are any of you familiar with the stewardship consulting program that happens by referrals out of the 25 Beacon Street?
No. Yes.
No. Who is familiar? Okay, not quite half of you. And is that because the congregations you are a part of have used the services? Okay. So what happens is that when congregations find themselves at some point where they're at the threshold, at the verge of doing something big that's going to cost a lot of money. It can vary, but that's almost always the circumstance. Sometimes they call Boston, and when they do, they're referred to Wayne Clark, who's the director of the program, and sometimes, depending on the need, Wayne will, in addition to referring people to the really quite voluminous resources on money and stewardship that are out there, will say, a consultant might be what you need. And the program started exclusively working with congregations on capital campaigns, and we still do that more than anything else. But because stewardship is a big issue, because money is a big issue for our congregations and is, I would say, becoming more and more of an issue and a concern to our congregations. We also work with congregations on annual stewardship drives, annual budget drives, sometimes the strategic planning that's needed before you need to do a big project, sometimes on estate planning, the whole range of things. And so we get referred and go and work with congregations. And the reason that I continue to do this stewardship work, in addition to doing parish ministry, is not only because my husband, who's also a parish minister, and I have been serving together, so he lets me leave town sometimes. But the reason that I choose to do it is because it allows me to find out about, get close to the congregations, usually where something really interesting and important has happened. Because really interesting and important things cost money. It's a connection that we don't always make, but it is true. I have been involved with congregations and money since 1988, when I was a fairly new member of the church in Yarmouth, Maine, and somebody, I don't remember who, it might have been the minister, approached me at coffee hour, I'm sure, and asked me if I wanted to be co-chair of the canvas. And I was too young, too new to know enough about that to say no. So I said yes. And really, really, with at that point kind of a fixation on the name, because I thought, why are they talking about, canvas is a fabric. Why are we, this clearly has to do with money. I was deeply confused, which I guess, and inexperienced, which made me a good candidate. And I learned an enormous amount from doing that. I learned an even more enormous amount from working on the capital campaign that our little church in Maine did a number of years later, and from being the president of the board of that church for 3 years. All of those things taught me a lot about congregations and money and pledge drives, canvas, stewardship, whatever we call it. We call it lots of different things. And then being a parish minister has taught me an enormous amount more about some of the challenges. So I'm happy to share that with you, and you'll get a chance to hear and talk with one another too about some of the things that I'm passionate about. I need to be clear what this isn't. I am not going to tell you, and you can get up and leave if you want. I am not going to tell you how to run your pledge drive this coming year. There are lots of resources for that. And I can refer you to some of those. My concern is that we spend a lot of time talking about how we do this important work, and perhaps not enough time talking about what it means in the context of our congregations, what it means as part of our ministry to work on stewardship. And that focus on how we do it rather than what we're doing means that the content that we're including in our pledge letters and our conversations are more about how we're doing something rather than what we're doing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let me check one of my assumptions. We're going to spend time talking about assumptions today. How many of you would say that issues relating to money and stewardship are pretty high up on the anxiety level in your congregations right now? We have 2 hands there. And how many of you would say, that's not an area where people are really anxious in my congregation?
Maybe it should be, but aren't.
The bliss of ignorance, possibly. Okay, good. That's good. That proportion may mean something in our congregations as a whole, and we'll go on from there. So actually, this is a good moment. I'm going to start this right here, if I could. This is just the roster of people that we think were registered. If you see your name, check it off. And if you don't see your name, put it down, please, so that we know that you were here.
Where am I supposed to go?
Are you not on the list?
Yeah, I wonder where I signed up for.
Oh, well,
This is
I'm happy to have you here. So, the question that I want to engage with you today is really, how should we attend to stewardship in our churches? We're spending a lot of time and energy on them, and a lot of anxiety, really a lot of time, if you think about it. Let me do another little survey. How many weeks of the year, of the church year, would you say are in one way or another dominated by concern of the pledge drive or other concerns about money? How many weeks of the year?
6.
6? Only 6, okay.
I would say it's constant, it's really broke.
Okay, 6 weeks, you're constantly talking about money? About 6?
Yeah, you're on.
I say we spend about 3 months planning and then another couple of months doing.
At least. Okay.
But stewardship is your
But then we also have a year-round stewardship.
So, behind the scenes, to some extent, there's planning, and then there's implementing, and then there are year-round things. Okay. Other thoughts on that?
Well, I think the drive itself usually lasts 3 to 4 weeks, but then there's the kickoff event, and there's the planning, and there's trying to fit it in the budget, and the budget comes afterwards, I suppose.
Right. If you include the budget meetings and the budget
Oh, that's another 2 months.
votes, that's another, how much time?
2 months after the
2 months?
drive.
So are you saying that you're doing budgeting and stewardship as the same committee?
No,
No,
but it's a congregational function.
but one influences the,
Yeah, one sort of defines the other.
I would say our place 9 months. The only time we don't do it is during the summer. The week or so from the annual meeting till the summer starts. And a couple of weeks at the beginning of church when everybody feels good. But other than that, we're always doing something.
and that may have, the fact that you feel that way, and I've sat in the president's chair as you are, may have to do with the seat that you're sitting in. Because I think one of the things,
Let me sit.
it is, well, and I'm sure you're doing a wonderful job in that seat, but I think that because anxiety is associated with financial concerns in our churches, not infrequently, the leaders, and in that I include the professional staff and the ministers, to some extent try to protect the congregation from that anxiety. And that's not a bad impulse necessarily, but I would say it is hard, maybe makes it harder on those leaders who are holding those concerns themselves. So we get wrapped up in this. We get worried, and then sometimes we get excited because we read an article or talk to a consultant or a neighboring congregation and we say, aha, we have this new system. We're going to do it this way this year. We're going to do face-to-face connections, or we're going to do cottage gatherings, or we're going to only send people. Their excitement and energy goes into changing the system, and that can eat up, I would say, almost any amount of time that we give it. It has a way of doing that, and to some extent there is a curtain between the congregation as a whole, most of the time, and the leadership who are struggling with these things. All of that comes at a cost, and all of it comes from assumptions that we start out with. And I would tell you who wrote this if I knew. It was an anonymous quote from something that Wayne Clark, who's the director of the program, published. What you ask determines what you find, and what you find sets the agenda for action. The questions that we ask to begin with, the questions we start out with, this has to do with probably everything in life, not just stewardship, to some extent determine the answers that we find, and then those answers determine what we do. All of which is merely to say that paying attention to what we ask, what our questions are, is important, because it's likely to shape the way we do. I would, what I want to talk to you about today is assumptions that we have and that we work from in stewardship. And one of the reasons I believe that this is so challenging for us is because so many things are changing, and it was wonderful to have Christine talk about that this morning. So many of the things about church, things about congregational life that have always been in a particular form are not staying still. They're moving around in a way that is disconcerting. One of the things that the FAS Collaborative, the religious educator creative folks at Meadville Lombard that Pat was just referring to, are fond of saying is, you know, that concern about attendance and how people are not coming as much, and maybe if we shift something or have better snacks, people will come. They're fond of saying they're not coming back. It's not that people are not interested in church, it's not that they will never come, but that every week attendance for particular certain generational segments of our society That may be a thing of the past. That's a big adjustment that we're struggling with. Then we have the whole idea of a social media presence. One of the reasons why people can feel connected to a congregation, even if they're not attending very often on Sunday, is perhaps because they're paying attention to the minister's blog, to the church's website, if it's dynamic and new things are coming up there, to the church's Facebook page. And they may feel quite connected, and you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what their connections are and what they're about, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. Our congregation in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, maybe 3 years ago now, after long discussions, we created a Facebook page. And then we decided that our Facebook page should be something other than the idea of the church bulletin board. So we didn't put announcements of upcoming potlucks and this and that's. We put links to articles on Huffington Post or other media or blogs or some of those wonderful images that the UU media people are coming up with. Just an array of things that were evocative of a Unitarian Universalist values and principles. And then, because I was an administrator on the page, I could actually, and I did, I paid attention to, especially at the beginning, how many people were liking the page, and then who it was. In the 3 years that I was directly involved with that, there were hundreds of people who liked the page. There were never, the percentage of members of the church who liked that page, of all the likes, fewer than half of them were people I even knew. Whether they were members or not, these were other people who had found the page because a friend had posted something and had linked to something. So suddenly our congregation, in one way or another, was bigger than it had been before. And I didn't have any direct way of knowing even what these folks looked like, much less how to talk to them, if you will. The first time we got somebody who liked the page with a name written in Chinese characters, I felt like we had really moved. This whole idea that we are more than our congregational walls. There is, I don't know whether you're aware of this, this has been going on for decades, much, much more intense competition for charity dollars, contributions that people in this country make to their congregations or anything else. The numbers are astronomical, which helps us to understand why it's so much harder for congregations to raise money. And then there are significant generational differences, and those show up in everything that we do, and they certainly show up in the way people give money. Somebody said that World War II generation, authority is actually normal. So if the church says, we need money, and we need you to pledge, and we need you, in fact, to pledge 3% more than you did last year, that generation may well do that, because they've been asked to. Baby boomers, not so much. We grew up thinking that it was a good idea to question authority. So that same letter, which is really effective and goes out to the congregation, that's really effective with the World War II generation, is going potentially to irritate the baby boomers. And then if we're not reaching out to the younger people in ways that are other than a letter, do you know how many people in your congregation actually never open mail? Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Never open email either.
And they don't even open email either. So the communication challenges alone are significant, but then there's also what are we saying? So these are challenges. These are big challenges that we all have to face. The point that I keep walking around and making in the midst of conferences on worship style and communication and social media, etc., is that it's not just the other parts of our congregational lives that need to change in order to adapt to these changing realities. Stewardship does too. And we are just figuring out how to do that. I think it is important to start with a recognition that no matter how hard we work and how well we do those old models, they're probably not going to be quite up to the challenges that we have in front of us. So what stewardship assumptions are we working from? I'll spend just a little bit of time with you thinking about that. And to prime the pump, I'm going to show you a few that I've put together by, Wayne Clark and me. Wayne has a whole list of something like 20 myths. I'm only giving you 2 today. His myth number 11 is, because we don't like to talk about money, financial commitments must be sought indirectly. Now, some of you laughed when you saw that. But have you seen that in your congregations in action? And give me a for instance.
It doesn't belong in congregational life, in spiritual life.
It's not just that it doesn't belong in the sanctuary, in the worship space, it actually doesn't belong in the congregation, yeah.
I don't want to diss ministers, but I've heard it coming from ministers more than anybody.
And so what is it that you've heard ministers say? I am going to believe you, don't worry.
We're not here to ask these people for their money to pledge. Don't go after them right away to join and pledge.
Okay, so we're getting that message from the pulpit, if we will, directly and indirectly. Any other instances?
Just to me, because I think I'm the treasurer, in terms of like, you gotta get money in, you gotta get money in.
Right.
I'm very anxious about it because we're so in the red. But like, oh no, you can't do that. This is a spiritual, the spiritual.
It's a secret in our, it's like a secret in our congregation. Nobody knows what anybody else gives. You don't know the category, you don't know anything.
That's our
It's
obligation.
highly confidential.
There's a
We're not
lot of
supposed
concern
to
about transparency
reveal
in
their-
giving in congregations, and in my congregation particularly. But I've seen this, talking to people about this other places.
So let's just explore this, because I know you're right. If we articulate what that concern is, what is it that people are actually worried about, do you think?
They're worried about, some people give and they don't want to know, they don't want everybody to know what they give.
And why?
And it should be confidential.
And
Either because they're embarrassed about how little they give, or they're embarrassed about how much they give. Feel that
right.
We've had a couple of people tell me, because we only have like 3 people in our congregation who know what everybody gives. One person came to me and said, I have to lower my pledge because I heard I might be the biggest giver.
Heard what? Sorry.
They might be
They
They didn't want to be the biggest giver.
didn't want.
So this person actually said, I'm going to have to lower my pledge because I don't want to be the biggest giver. You are right. You are right. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think that somewhat is because people are afraid of the responsibility that goes with being a leadership donor. It's not that they're not generous, but I think that they're afraid that too much is on their shoulders, that if they couldn't pledge, everything else would fall apart. And I don't think it's necessarily that it's a shame. I think they're worried about the responsibility that goes with it.
It can be any number of things. Worry about responsibility. It can be also resentment. And people can worry sort of anticipatory resentment. I don't want to find out that I'm the biggest giver in this church, so I'd rather not know, and I'd rather nobody else know too.
This is part of a bigger issue. We don't talk about money.
Right.
Nobody knows what anybody makes. We don't talk about it's a big secret.
It's broader than just church life. Yes. What were you going to say?
I think that people who give a lot may see that some people give a little, and if they see those people are giving very little, even though these people may be doctors and lawyers and they're pledging $100, you say, well, what's his problem, or what's her problem, look what I'm giving, look what they're giving, it's so unfair. And I think that could lead to dissension and fighting.
And so once again, there's a concern. If I don't know, then maybe the problems won't happen. The irony being that not knowing means we make up stories, and then we're resenting something which isn't even real. And money is a toxic topic. Somebody did a study, I don't know who this was, and who knows if it's really true, but I really like this story, so I believe it. This was one of those studies where they're trying to prime people with a particular thought to see if it makes any difference in their interactions afterwards. So group of people, perhaps this size, the split in half of them get a lecture which is about, I don't know, dogs and cats. And the other half gets some sort of a presentation about money. Not their money, but just money in particular, or economics or something. Everybody in both of these groups was instructed that, okay, you're going to be in this room, somebody is going to come in and talk to you, interview, and you need to just set up some chairs so there'll be some place for you to sit. The people who were primed with money set up those two chairs, folding chairs in this room, on an average 18 inches farther apart than the people who had got to think about cats and dogs. There is so much potential toxicity and fear and resentment and embarrassment and shame and on and on and on. And we don't like those things in our congregations, so we try to avoid them. Yes?
Isn't it a privacy issue?
Yes.
I'm a new treasurer, and I was Delphi, I didn't know. I went to my first Board of Trustees meeting, and I brought a printed out list of all the people's pledges for the prior year. People, they were appalled, we've never seen this before.
They don't want to see it. They don't want to see it.
Their eyes roll back in their heads when you go to them.
We have a lot of work to do, I would say, in this area, because these fears and concerns, I'm not saying they're all foolish, they're so deeply rooted that it's hard to even talk about them. Yes, just had your hand up.
Well, there are several problems, though, here, which is that if you don't know what's expected, and we've had this discussion in ours, if you don't have any idea what's expected, and you say, I'm going to need $500, now that sounds like a lot of money to you, except that the average donation maybe should be $3,000.
Right.
Whereas my sister-in-law said, we get $5,000, and I went, oh, you really have to give someone an idea of what your budget is and what you expect.
Right.
And it's true that everybody has had difficult times. Everybody, however, everybody is not having a difficult time. You spend $5 a day on, a latte. You can give more money to the church. And it becomes letting people know what we need and hoping their hearts are with it. It's not just about talking about money. It's like the lights need to go on. People need raises. It's
Right.
What is it also a problem with where people have come from religiously? They come from
Yes.
tradition expecting this tithing and stuff.
Yes,
and
there certainly is
their aversion to anything
stuff that
connecting
people bring.
religion and money and expectations.
I would respond to that sometimes our sensitivity antennas are really sharp. It's, the person who, the next time or the first time the word God is spoken in the sanctuary, I'm out of here. There is that kind of sensitivity to money and fundraising too. We need to, but you're talking about all the right stuff. The answer, sorry, did you have an urgent thing you wanted to say?
I just wanted to bounce off what Rainey said about setting people's expectations and giving them an idea about what is an appropriate amount to give.
Good.
We're gonna. I'm always struggling. Do you let the people in the congregation know what the average pledge is? Wayne Clark says don't talk about the average pledge, but I'm wondering if that's a useful piece of information for people to know.
It could be. I think that the truth, and this is Wayne's, not mine, though I agree with him completely, if we're uncomfortable with the topic of money, really the only thing we can do about that is to talk about money enough to develop some comfort. It's like any other forbidden topic. Think how good we've gotten about talking about sex. We've actually gotten pretty good at it, and some of us can even talk about politics. Money, not so much.
You don't even know this, but it's
Yeah. Right. I'm going to go through the other two, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break. No, thank you. Myth number 13. This is a favorite of mine. A healthy church has no debt. How many of you would say that the congregation you're in has that as one of their unwritten commandments? Okay. Perhaps you're not even talking to them.
That's true.
Here's what Wayne says, and I agree with him completely. A church with no debt puts financial stability above its mission. And Wayne has actually made that specific. He has said that nobody will publish this, so we're going to start publishing it. Any congregational budget that has less than 2% of its expenses going toward debt service cannot be working loyally, faithfully toward its mission.
Does he
Oh,
say
I
why?
totally disagree.
The reason, and you get to, the reason being that our missions, the assumption behind it, my assumption behind that is that we have enough money most of the time for the things we're already doing. The mission pushes us beyond that, and that's the assumption behind it.
I think that totally depends on if you have an endowment or not. I mean, I think it would be irresponsible. My church has an endowment. I don't see how I think it would be irresponsible to borrow money if we have capital to fund mission-driven.
And there are certainly situations where that's...
So you don't take a mortgage?
We don't have a mortgage.
Do you have one on your house?
I do, but we don't, I mean,
You ever take a
the
car?
building is bad.
Okay. This is one of the potentially most divisive issues in congregations.
No, but I mean, if you didn't need it, I mean, you're asking, do we have a mortgage?
I will
Building
give you
is
a
paid
simple.
for.
I will give you a simple answer of why you would do that if you didn't need it, if you had endowment. One of the reasons that congregations, the most common time that a congregation will take out a loan, take out a mortgage, is when they're doing a building campaign.
Right.
And the reason for doing that is because you couldn't build a building if you didn't borrow money, but also in borrowing the money, what you're doing, among other things, is sharing the cost of that facility with the people who aren't yet there. So that's the rationale. That debt is one of the ways that we share our responsibilities with the future. I raise it because I know it's divisive and people feel strongly about it. I do think this bottom line, the purpose of the church is not to balance a budget, is it's not mine, it's from one of the radical books I'm going to show you in a little bit. Last one of these, and then we'll take a break. We've talked about this a little bit already. Talking about money, this is the myth. Talking about money corrupts everything that's good about church. I was talking to a friend, a very, very effective, dynamic lay leader in a congregation in JPD, doesn't matter where. They spent 2 years developing this really wonderful program that I hope you're all going to hear about soon, which is a way of developing leadership by meeting, among other things, by meeting one-on-one with people in the congregation. What are you already doing? Where do you feel yourself growing? What do you want to grow into next? She was telling me about this, and I said, have you considered including the stewardship conversation in that? And she said, no. We talked about it, and we decided that if we did, we were putting the whole project at risk, because I thought that was really fascinating. My assertion is that the truth is that money will always play a powerful role, and not talking about it just makes it more powerful. And it is possible for us to embrace how we deal with money as a part of our transformational mission. So that's my gospel.
Wow.
Why don't you take a break? So just very quickly, before we move on, what other assumptions can you think of that are powerful, are operating in your congregations about stewardship?
The benevolent benefactor.
You go there. Does everybody know what Marilyn means?
No.
Did you want to say?
What I mean is, so when members of the congregation don't actually realize that they have any responsibility for stewardship, that, I thought that was taken care of. And
In other words, they don't believe that they need to donate any.
They don't have that connection. If anything, the best they'll do is like your public radio, that maybe you'll give $50 to. They might say, I'll give you $50 at the most, because they really think business is being taken care of in some wonderful way.
It's not historically. I'm not talking about I am talking about a particular congregation and not yours, where the story was that when the end of the pledge drive happened, the wealthy men and the minister would retire across the street to the club with their guitars, with their cigars. Probably didn't have guitars. And they would say, so how much are we short? And the answer would come, and they would get out their checkbooks and make up the difference. These two generations ago. I'm pretty sure they're dead. So, other assumptions. Yes.
We can't ask for more, they won't give. We can't ask and they won't give.
We can't ask. And they won't give. Okay. Isn't that interesting? Because, of course, if we don't ask, they definitely won't give. It's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. Yes. Something else.
If I say how much I give to the congregation, the earth will open up and swallow me.
If I say how much, yes. Terrible things will happen. Yes.
I have a variation on that.
Yes.
Not even if I say how much, if you say who I am. But that's private, just
I disclose. Right. Yes. Good. What else?
An assumption that I've often heard is everything's fine. The church seems fine. Just as it is.
And again, the irony there is that some people are working really, really hard to project that just.
And people are trying to cover up what's wrong.
So I'm not trying to bash the UUA. I'm not. But I think that it was problematic, the extent to which the UUA in 2008, 2009, when there was a very significant financial problem with our associational budget because of the crash, the message that was being projected is, yep, we lost a bunch of money and everything's fine.
Yeah,
That's true.
They did. And I actually, I was in a meeting in Boston, and I said, when Tim Brennan, who was a wonderful guy, the financial advisor to the UUA, was talking about how they had somehow survived 35% cuts and managed anyway. And I said, I just need to say out loud that the congregations are listening to you, and they're doing the same thing. And the first thing that gets cut is the contribution to the UUA. And that connection, it seemed important to say it out loud, because it wasn't clear. Yes, other assumptions. Yes.
If we push too hard, people will leave.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
That's a great push. People will leave. Yes. And that connects up to that vestigial, whoever was talking about it before, idea that people have belonged to congregations that have pushed too much on money and they've left, so there is that concern. Yes?
I've heard one that just blows my socks off. It's called raises. They should be thrilled they have a job.
Yeah. I've heard that.
It's pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah. Or another variation is, well, I haven't had a raise.
Right. That's the
Right.
other
So
part.
why should they have one?
Right. And that
Well, that's not an assumption, that's just a
that's the real pain that
Right.
a lot of people are feeling. Right. Yes. Anything else?
Yeah, I hear over and over again things like, well, we really are a poor congregation, we really don't have a lot of money.
Sorry.
Meanwhile, we're, big lawyers, lawyers.
So I have consulted extensively with some like 30 congregations. I have yet to encounter a congregation that tells me they're not poor. And it's not that they're completely fantasizing. What they're saying is, we are a congregation made up of lots of different kinds of people, and not everyone here is wealthy, and we're, but that we are not a wealthy congregation, or we are a poor congregation, can be almost a merit badge, a badge of pride sometimes. Yes. One more.
I think there's an assumption that says
The way we do it now is the way we have to do
Oh, thank you for that, yes.
This is the way.
it. Whatever the fundraising way is, maybe they have a concert series, or maybe they have a church school, or, I don't mean a church school, I mean a daycare Monday through Friday.
Right,
But whatever the way is, that's the way they gotta continue.
right. Yes, so I've run into many people who are multi-year, sometimes multi-decade veterans of their church's budget drives. And they know, and they're amazing, some of them. They're great. They work incredibly hard and they know how to do it. And I have learned, I have interesting conversations with them, but I have learned at some point to say, do you love it?
No.
And I don't hear that. So this is the way we have to do it. It's hard. It chews people up. It's frustrating. And we have to do it this way. I think that's a problem. Yes?
Question. Just this last little piece that you said. You asked them, do you love it? What's it?
Doing the
During
annual
the
stewardship.
fundraising or during the congregation?
Sorry.
Being part of the congregation. Because that's where the passion is. That's
Exactly.
go with.
And that's a perfect segue, but that's not what I meant. What I meant to say is, do you love doing the annual budget drive, whatever you call it? Yes.
But you have these wonderful stories, and our interim minister just got a duck on This Is the Way, and she talked about preaching, I think it was her, preaching in front of a congregation where in midway in the congregation, the entire congregation would move from the left side to the right side. Nobody said anything. Everybody just got up and moved. And the story was something about the heat. You know, the heat got really hot, and when it got really hot, finally one day someone said, I'm sorry, but why do you do that? Why don't you just fix the heat? And it was that whole thing about
I think this is the way we've always done.
this is the way we've always done it.
We just get up and move.
We just get up and go.
Very good.
It's like the family story of the Easter ham.
Yes.
And
Well, she cuts the ends off.
Chop the ends off, and nobody knew
I
why.
go, why do you do that? She goes, so someone's always done it that way.
And the real story was the great-grandmother's roasting pan
Was
wasn't
too
big
small.
enough.
It's my favorite story.
Okay. I have a dear friend who's a parish minister and of a big church, policy governance, chief executive, everything. And she has many job titles, in other words. And she said to me that she really thinks the only job title she should have is Chief Alignment Officer. And by that, she meant being the one person who consistently, faithfully is asking, is whatever this thing that we're doing, is it in line with our values? Is it in line with our mission? That is what keeps us going, to the extent that we can, first of all, know what our deepest values are, and then make sure that everything we do in the church lines up with those. That's where we find the energy and the passion to do the hard stuff. And I think we understand that when we think about social justice. We don't think about it in terms of stewardship necessarily. So, little exercise here. I want you to think just for a minute for yourself. This is very, from your own perspective, of one word that expresses why you love your church. When you watch your congregation be this, you know why you're there and you give so much of yourself. What's that thing at the core, at the center? Can you think of a word to express that?
Community.
Community.
That's my word. That's my word.
Your word too.
Connectedness?
Connectedness, okay.
Mine too.
Your two.
Tradition.
Okay.
Caring.
Caring, not disconnected to those.
Tradition.
Tradition. Okay. Okay.
I do-gooder. Get a
Do-gooder.
bunch of do-gooders.
Which makes you happy on some level?
Yes, it does.
Good. That's great.
Making a
That's
difference.
great. Doing good. What could be better than that? What else?
Multi-faith.
Just say 3 words.
Yeah, okay.
Change my life.
Change my life. Okay. All right. We now have a dispensation for 2 or even 3 words.
Multi-faith is
Sorry?
It's multi-faith.
Multi-faith, okay. When you see your congregation being a place where that's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, for mine, you just reminded me, multi-generational. You know, where I see generations interacting and doing important stuff together. Yes?
Diversity.
Diversity. Okay, all right. Yes?
Respect the diversity.
Respect for diversity. All right, good. Okay, hang on to those words. Who didn't say anything in that exercise? Just put your hands up for a minute. I won't make anything terrible happen to you. Okay. One.
It's a repeat.
Well, somebody said.
No. I'm going to ask you to do something else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want the 6 of you. The rest of you can think about it. I want the 6 of you to, if you can, express in one word what, when you think about your congregation and money and stewardship, what's one word that expresses your sense? Very personal. It doesn't have to be negative.
Joyful.
Joyful.
I'm sorry, what, one word that expresses?
When I think about my congregation, this is the in quotes, when I think about my congregation and money and stewardship, both of them, I feel joyful.
Oh, God.
Oh wait, you're one of the 6. Okay. All right.
I feel frustrated.
Frustrated?
That was my word.
Frustrated. Did you have a
I feel good.
good? Okay.
Discouraged.
Sorry?
Discouraged.
Discouraged. Okay. All right. Any other? Yes. Empowered. Interesting. Which? Yes.
Removed.
Removed. Okay, we need to, this is would those of you who just had those money stewardship words, could you just stand up, please, and say those again? One at a time.
Frustrated. Good.
Empowered.
Discouraged.
Joyful.
Removed.
Frustrated. Okay. That was great. Thank you for doing that. It's great because I didn't know what I was going to get. I didn't plan to any of you. What we heard, I think, is 6 or 7 words about money and stewardship that actually didn't fit very well together at all. They're all real, they're all sincere, and they aren't, they don't go with each other. And I would say they're not even aligned to each other, much less to the mission of the congregation. You all did the what do you value about your congregation exercise, I think, pretty easily. And the things that were said resonated, even though, well, tradition stands out.
I'm wondering, would it be helpful, or maybe it would be totally not helpful, to have a sense amongst all of us, are we from large congregations or small congregations, and new congregations or very long-term congregations? Because there may be some similarities in the good parts or the frustrating parts based upon those criteria.
Let's find out. Just from those of you who had words about money and stewardship. So, new, old, and small, big. Size, something about size and something about age.
What's big?
Over 300, over 400. 400 or more.
Old, small.
Old, small.
Well, we have about 120 members and $250,000 budget.
And are you a new congregation?
About 16 years.
So you're a new congregation and you're small and you feel good. Pay
Right, so that's
attention to that. Good, great.
Old, big.
Old, big, and you felt removed.
Empowered.
Empowered, I'm sorry. You felt removed. Okay, empowered. Good. Discouraged.
Old, big, discouraged.
Old, big, discouraged.
Mid-size, 400,
Yeah.
60 years old, so moderately old.
Pretty old. No, that's young. Yes, go ahead. And, okay, enjoy.
You always said
Yes.
joyful.
Old with possibly half new membership with a new building.
Okay.
So removed is more like, we can't really talk about it because we don't know what we're in for yet.
And how many people?
Very small, 40.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So that messes with one of my assumptions,
Yeah.
which is The larger the congregation, the more possibility there is for people feeling removed from the interesting. Yes, sorry.
Old, big, and frustrating.
Old, big, and frustrating. I'm not sure what it tells us. I think it may tell
No, it
us.
is particularly, but I thought maybe it would give us some vision that.
I think it tells us something about our assumptions. The point that I would like to assign all of us, not just you, is how can we assure that our stewardship efforts, whatever shape they take and whatever they are about, how can we assure that they are an integral part of the congregation's core mission in line with our shared values? I would maintain that if we ask that question, and we ask it at the right time, in other words, at the beginning of a stewardship effort, we can do this. We can do this. And it has to do, most of all, with what we choose to talk about. The letter that goes out to the congregation, and I would imagine that all of us, I know that this is true for me, have been involved with those late night meetings where people are not breathing too well, and you try to figure out how to let people know that the problems are real, and you write a letter which says, if you would just please increase your gift by 3%, 5%, pick your percent, then we'll be fine. Those letters don't work. They aren't effective in raising money because there's nothing compelling about a percentage. Right. And they don't make the point that the reason for the money is to fulfill the mission of the congregation. So it's not rocket science. It's not that we don't know what we should say, but we do worry, and we talked about the fact that leaders are sometimes feeling removed from their congregation, and forget the clarity of the message. So it may be that this is really all I want to say, but of course I have more. Yes.
Well, maybe I should let you say more, but I want to back up what you're saying here.
But
I think we who put the pledge drive together should put ourselves in the place or remind ourselves how we think when we receive solicitation letters in the mail or email or whatever from, I don't know who, environmental groups, hunger groups, World Peace groups, whoever it is that we receive mail from, and I guess we receive mail from all those folks.
Yep.
What is it that motivates us? And if the Audubon Society, for example, said, we have to make our budget, so please give more, how much would you give to the Audubon Society? I would rip that thing up and throw it away.
Right. So that's not hard either. To put ourselves in the place of the harried person who decided, in fact, this time to open the letter from the congregation and read it. How many of you have gotten those letters back? Oh, I'm reliving nightmares here. Where somebody, goes through the spreadsheet which is attached to the letter and finds the arithmetic error. And
right.
No, I just want to further the point. A request for money because we need it almost makes the asker look at fault.
Right.
And in fact, you sometimes will get negative pushback. Well,
right. Because
you screwed that thing up. It's yours to fix.
Right. That's right. That's right.
We don't have a budget problem. We have a spending problem.
I'm not sure that this experienced group really needs this prompt, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Can you think of a time in your life when you have felt great, just wonderful, about a financial gift that you made? Don't say anything for a second. Just think about that. Somebody have a really quick...
Katrina, donating money for Katrina.
Donating money for Katrina.
Yeah.
Now, who'd you give that? Was it to the UUA?
We gave it to a sister church. A sister woman church downtown.
Okay, good. Another one.
Okay, this is like not giving to a charity, but when I see a homeless person on the street and I throw money in their cup, even if it's like a dollar bill or a handful of change, I really feel good about that.
Good.
You can't keep doing it, but I try to do it as often as I can.
So there's a directness to that.
Yeah.
And and it's not hard in our imaginations. I mean, heck, we just watch television. It's not hard to imagine what kind of difference it might have made to somebody, some real person's life. Yes,
Partners in health.
partners in health.
Yep, every single time.
I am happily a complete sucker for the Heifer International. Because for all the reasons you know. Yes.
I don't know why, I feel like I'm the only one
It's all right. It's
thinking the
good.
way I'm thinking. We're not a charity that we're giving to without an expectation of something in return. It's not giving to help needy children somewhere. We're receiving service, we're hopefully getting value for some services that we're receiving.
We're giving it to ourselves.
Right, we're giving it to ourselves, and I think that maybe we're so used to giving for other things that maybe we don't really want to admit that, I'm being a little selfish. I'm going to give money towards a charity that actually helps me, that I can be on the receiving end of it.
That's you just hit it, though. The art of receiving. We should be grateful for the receiving as opposed to always.
That's actually one of the hardest things, is to figure out how to be
But I mean,
grateful
from
for what we've
From
received.
a budget point of view, and since I'm the treasurer on the spending side more than on the fundraising side, everybody in my church says we want a full-time minister. We want a full-time DRE. We want blah, 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 blah. Well, all these fixed costs, I really don't feel like, I understand how we should be giving to mission, but a lot of this stuff is kind of required before we even start talking about mission. If we have assumptions that we want full-time staff to help us reach our mission.
But is that your mission, just to hire full-time staff?
No, but we've made it an assumption that we're going to have, and we're going to pay UUA guidelines, we're going to pay healthcare costs, that all goes towards our mission.
But for what? What is the full-time staff going to be doing? What is the fair share to the UUA for? What is the religious education program doing? I totally get what you're saying, and I know how to give those lectures on the numbers and the fixed costs. But I think that we
but what I'm saying
hobble
is
ourselves.
But it's different than giving money to Heifer International, where we have no expectation of receiving a benefit except feeling good about it.
I think people actually have fairly high expectations of their nonprofit gifts, not even though.
No, but I mean personal expectation. You want it to be well.
You're putting your finger on exactly the right thing, though I think we get a little confused about this too. Is it for me, or is it for someone else? And
I think we don't want to admit it that it's for ourselves.
Well, hang on one second. Catherine has something that she
I don't
wants
think
to say.
that's quite it, because to me, part of my spiritual belief is that I want people in the world to be better off, myself included. I can be a better spokesperson for the values I believe in because I have a community behind me. So it's it's for lots more than just me. But I also would say when I give to Heifer, I feel good about it. I'm getting the reward because of the pleasure I get. But the side about the mission of the church, of your congregation, I have to think of it as a mission in the world. And that makes me very satisfied.
Well, given that people's emotional reactions to money and to giving, we are fooling ourselves if we think that we can run a stewardship drive and not deal with those. They are a factor in our congregational lives. They just are. So I'm not trying to say distort the story, but I'm trying to say be aware of the effect of what you choose to talk about. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I keep talking.
No, go ahead. I
But
thought somebody else had.
I think in answer to her question, I think like our congregation, we have what we call a community kitchen, among other things. And I think when you send out like a pledge letter or any kind of money asking, and I think that should be sort of emphasized. This is what we're doing in the larger community.
Right.
And as a result, if you're giving to us, you will allow us to keep doing these things.
Right.
You know, we're involved in Interfaith Council. We're trying to.
Though, I'm sorry, you reminded me of something I wanted to say that I don't have a slide for. Be aware of the pronouns that you use. Because so often when we write these letters, we say we the board, we the leadership, we the minister, whatever, and you. We have a plan, we hope you will give money to it.
What should we be saying?
Well, if it's our congregation, then it's all first person plural, or first person singular. Those of you who are familiar with fundraising in almost any setting know, I hope you know this, that the most effective way to ask somebody for a gift is personally. I hope that you will join me in making a contribution to this good thing in this amount. Not, we're hoping that you will give money. So the question is, who's the we? There's a secret committee somewhere figuring out how much I should give. But if it's personal, if it's direct, then it makes sense. So I'm sorry to pick on you because you're completely right.
I got a question though. Let's say you're talking to somebody, you're writing like a direct mail thing.
Yeah.
We've sent this to people who signed our book once or twice. And is it okay to use the pronoun we are doing this if they're not really your congregant?
Yes, but there are a million judgment calls to be made in that. And as long as it's clear who the letter is from and who it's to, then I think in a way it would make no sense otherwise. But yes, but when we're writing letters to the members of when the members of the congregation who are the board are writing a letter to the members of the congregation who are not the board, it's all we, as much as it possibly can. Because boards can isolate themselves with only the best intentions, and that creates a distance, a separation, which is not.
So what are you saying? So what do you said the most effective way was to say, I hope you'll join me. And now you're saying, and then I signed the letter. But what you're saying is, the board, you said, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was talking about the personal appeal, and then I was switching to the letter that is going from a group of people to a larger group of people. The most direct appeals, the general point I was trying to make is the most direct appeals are the ones in which it is a person asking a person, or a group of people asking a group of people, because we're all in this together.
Right.
Are you saying that any letter that goes to the congregation shouldn't say you, shouldn't address them as
You know what's interesting?
How do you get around that?
Yeah.
Well, so let us not get stuck in this, but let me say to you that it's an interesting exercise. Draft the letter, and then look at all the places you've written that second person pronoun, you, and figure out if you need to say it, or if you can say we. Because anything you say about the congregation is something that we are all involved with.
So it's we and we, really. That's what you're saying, right?
We, our gifts.
We want us all to come together and produce whatever it is.
Okay.
That kind of way.
It's, again, I don't mean to be as sticky on this because obviously you need to write a coherent letter, but just ask yourself that question whenever you're writing the pronoun you. Are you creating distance where it isn't needed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me, oops. Maya Angelou says, I have found that among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver. Something about that feeling of being lighter in the world, of having shared my bounty with someone else makes me feel not worse, but better. And in a way, the work of stewardship, to the extent that it's inviting people to contribute to something good, you could think of it as your enormously important job as being that inviter. Yes?
With our large givers, last year I used an analogy off the phrase of give until it hurts. And, often we talk about giving till it hurts. But I said, if you burst through that hurt, then actually give till you feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
Give until it feels
We
good.
say.
Give until it feels good. Right. That's important to
I
say.
would only do it with the larger givers, but
But why?
well, what I'm saying is, if someone gives $100 and really, truly stretches to give $100,
Sure.
well, then that's wonderful. They are giving everything they possibly can, and that's great.
Right.
But I'm not usually aware that $100 is their limit.
The reason I said why is that you know who your largest givers are. At least I certainly hope you do. You really don't know about those other people.
That's my point.
And so that image of giving through to the place where you're joyful and feel liberated is a message that I think can apply to all of us. I want to spend 3 or 4 minutes on this because I want to make sure that you know what makes a good stewardship program. So, and if you don't, I'm happy to point you in the directions of some resources. This book being one. Are you all familiar with Beyond Fundraising? Yes. This is the book that Wayne Clark publishes. Is that out there?
I'm sure
Yes. Yes, it is. It really and truly is a handbook, and it's meant, there are useful, detailed things in here. So what characterizes a good stewardship program? Just popcorn, just quickly. What do you know about?
It involves a lot of people.
A lot of people, great.
Involves personal canvassing.
Personal canvassing in the sense of one-on-one.
One-on-one or two-on-two.
Right, okay, but real people talking to real people. Good, lots of people, direct contact, what else?
Well-planned,
Sorry?
well-planned start and end dates.
Right, yes. And that is important, even though I asked you how long all of this absorbs the energy. A short campaign is possible.
Excellent thank you letters sent out in a timely
Yes.
fashion.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Say one thing that you're a fundraising professional, so you know. What's one thing that you do when you get a thank you letter that makes you know that it's a good one? I'm sure there are half a dozen things you could say.
It makes me feel good.
But I mean, in the letter itself.
Handwritten.
Personal.
Oh, it's
and
personal.
handwritten.
Handwritten.
Personal and handwritten is the very best way.
Yeah.
If it is a printed letter, I will admit to you, I actually see if the signature is real. Yes.
Mission connected.
Mission connected. Tell me why my gift made a difference to the mission that I'm supporting. Right, yeah.
Actually, specific goals are often like the goal stand. The congregation is coming together for a goal. That would typically be the highest amount of dollars.
Right, okay, so being clear on what the goals of this campaign this year, what are those goals for? Yes?
Celebration of the success.
Thank you for saying that. Yes. It is remarkable how not very good at celebrating we Unitarian Universalists tend to be.
Because we're also worn out by the end of the campaign.
So you know what? When I'm advising congregations about capital campaigns, and we talk about the large numbers of people that are involved, I say, figure out which 2 or 3 people are doing nothing but the parties.
Yeah.
The kickoff parties and the thank you party, because then all the rest of you who are exhausted can go to a party that somebody else has organized. Yes. Oh, very good. Very good suggestions. Anything else that is true about a good campaign? There are a lot of other things that could be said, but I think we will leave it there. Okay, reasons that we give. We've talked about this a little bit, but there are a couple of points that we don't always remember. We give to an organization, a church, any organization, because we're grateful, something wonderful has happened that we're glad about, to add meaning to our own lives and to help. Those things are true. The reason that human beings give organizations that ask are because we believe in its mission, we trust its leaders, and we have confidence in its financial stability. This is not me saying this. This is people who have studied and asked why people give money. And in our congregations, we forget this, to our peril. We've talked a lot about the mission, and that's important. The trusting the leaders, and by that I mean the minister, other professional staff, and the board, and have some confidence in the congregation's financial stability. Those are essential. And therefore, our appeals need to mention those things. Okay. How many of you have heard of or seen this book?
Talking about it.
Not your parents' offer. I cannot recommend it too highly. It's by a guy named J. Cliff Christopher. I have to look and see his name every time. It is a very Christian book, so you're going to have to translate, and it's not hard, just read it anyway. And his story that he tells in the beginning is he was a, energetic young pastor who got assigned to a congregation that needed to do a building project. And somehow he managed to help them raise a bunch of money. So he got transferred to another congregation that needed to do a building project, and they did. And so he had this big career in his association, whatever denomination, I'm not sure he says what it is, of being a big money raiser. And he thought, okay, I'm going to be a money raiser. I'm going to have an organization, a consulting group that does fundraising for congregations. And he discovered, as he started to do that he really didn't know very much at all. And he discovered that by talking to a bunch of people in nonprofit organizations who actually did know how to raise money. So this book, in part, is a way, and he practically says this, this book is a way of saying, churches, you are screwing up. You are not doing the job that you need to do. The wisdom is out there. Just learn it and do it. Wouldn't you say, Marilyn? It's kind of that.
Yes, I would. It's that basic. This is like the simple layman's terms.
Fundraising 101.
It's definitely fundraising 101, and I'm like zipping through it. I love it, and it's extremely powerful.
I do have one handout which has information on these books and a couple of other things, and also just I'm happy to send these slides to whoever would like them. Okay, so Cliff Christopher is learning all about fundraising, and he goes to a philanthropy conference, and the keynote is by a young attorney who has just announced that he's giving $1.5 million to this youth center. So he's a young man, and it's clear from his talk that he's a very religious guy. So Mr. Christopher, Reverend Christopher, calls him up the next day and says, "Can I come and see you?" And they have a long conversation, at the end of which Christopher asks him, "Would you ever consider giving a gift that large to your church?"
Oh my God.
Well, so I thought about whether I should leave the Lord in there or not, and I decided that I would, because that's really what the quote was.
Wow.
And what he's saying is that the youth center not only is doing work that this wealthy man can understand, but they're asking him for money to support the work of this youth center, which is tangible, which can be described, which is visible, which makes a difference in the world. So Christopher's point is that it isn't that our congregations of whatever denomination aren't changing lives, but we're not telling the stories. And we're not asking for money, and we're setting our sights low enough so that we might not know what to do with $1.5 million. And I'm sorry to say that, but I would like for us to get over that. The congregation that I just left in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, was given $1.5 million 11 years ago, 12 years ago, before I got there. And the stories are that the board members at that point were terrified by that, and that at least one minister said, this is awful. This could be the end of the... Which I'm stunned by, but I believe, because I think that people, because money is scary, it's toxic and it's also powerful, and it's interesting to note that there are very wealthy people in our society who could conceivably be given, they may even be members of congregations, and they're not thinking of those congregations as a place they want to make major investments. You have a horrified look on your face.
No, well, I am, because I'm thinking about what it would mean. What would it look like if we had more than just what we need to get by? Because basically we can make our budget every year, we can pay our minister, we can fund our basics, but we don't have anything left, and most everybody doesn't. We're happy if we have what we need, just to get by. So what would it look like if we had 10% more? What would that look like for our congregation? I'm not even sure. Does it mean we're all a part-time office assistant? But that's not really, that's not compelling.
I forgot to tell you that this $1.5 million given to the Lancaster Church has very clear restrictions on it. Principal can't be spent, but the income must be spent, and it must be spent for outreach. It must be spent in order to make Unitarian Universalist values available to anyone in Lancaster County who's interested. Yikes! How do we do that? And I loved, has everybody else heard? I hadn't heard what Christine Robinson said this morning, that people spell change LOSS. I'm going to remember that, because even that kind of change is a loss of what is known. Yeah. So
I read it in Michael Durrell's book about generous congregations. He says, you never get a letter from a charity that says, give us about the same as you gave us last year.
And yet, really, that kind of is the message. That
we often say, just keep your pledge going, for the next year, same as last year, and we'll be fine.
There are a couple of related things that I want to get to on that point, because I think they're important. So we give generously when we're asked personally. We give again when we are thanked personally. This is so not complicated, and it is remarkable how often it doesn't happen. But we can do it. I recently gave my public radio station a little extra money because I was impressed with some programming changes that they made. And I was, in fact, without income, without a paycheck at that point. So I wrote them a little note along with this check that I sent. And what I heard from them next was a note saying I needed to renew my membership. And, I get it. They're understaffed because they're trying to make do with, but it changed the way I felt. It changed the way I felt about the gift that I made and about this public radio station. So it's interesting.
You have to be prepared to succeed. And it's not so easy.
It's not. Thank you for saying it that way, Jerry. Okay, I'm going to give you a few of my assumptions.
Can I back up just a tiny bit, though? Asking personal, we're on the cusp of doing our next annual giving campaign. And asking personally, thanking personally, I guess I want to ask about doing that in a mass marketing kind of way. Like, we don't have the manpower to sit down and talk to every single person.
How many people?
How many?
Pledge units.
I'm so sorry to ask pledge units, yes. Households.
30.
230?
230?
230.
Yeah.
Do you have,
40, 250.
or could you find enough visiting stewards to visit 50 of them? That's 10 people. Because people need the personal connection. They don't actually have to have it unless they are one of the biggest donors in the congregation. Sorry, we should have said this. The people most important to visit personally every year are your biggest donors. And that's so counterintuitive for people. They think, well, wait a minute, we don't need to visit them because they are deaf. Okay, but these are people who, yes, they have wealth, but they're choosing where to put it. And so you need to do that. But if people have a wonderful encounter once every 3 years, and you can tell people that's exactly how you're doing it, or even every 4 years, I wouldn't want to go any longer than that, I think you can have a large part of the benefit of the person to person, and do the rest with a mass appeal. I mean, the fact that we don't have enough people to do everybody every year shouldn't change the knowledge that that is the best way to do it.
I want to follow up on that. In our congregation, I think it was very healthy. We terminated a program where people in stewardship would do a massive follow-up to people who had not responded or had not pledged. And this was every year happening. And eventually, there was a decision. He said, "Look, just don't do it. Do not expend 80% of your energy for that group of people who are not going to be responsive. That energy should be focused on the most responsive pledgers." Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Not only because...
And it's hard to do because there's a fairness issue. These are guys who, they're giving 100, they're giving 200, but we don't want to feel, don't want to make it feel like they're not participating. We also don't want to feel like, then it's going to make the people who are giving more, that they feel bad if they knew that other folks were not pledging.
You also have to take care...
Or not pledging very much.
You also have to take care of your volunteers. You have to take care of your visiting stewards. And if what you're asking people to do is make a whole bunch of phone calls that are never returned and feel like a pain in the neck, that's not a good way to use people resources.
I've been doing this for 5 years now. I used to be a member of this church, by the way, which has more money than anybody, nobody.
More money than that.
Well, maybe. Nobody gives money, but they don't really try hard to get it, so no big deal. Where I am now, we lost our chops. But what we found was a third of the pledging units respond without you doing anything. A third respond to one, and the others, you're going to kill yourself. And so we divide it up so that the board gets the last group, so that we don't kill our volunteers on the other folks. And it seems to work for the volunteers. It doesn't change the way we get pledges back.
Interesting.
I think we've solved that in a completely different way. At least I hope.
Yes.
I mean, for the last couple of years, we at a certain point we just renew all the non-responders.
Right.
And last year we actually renewed them for the first time with an increase. We looked at the average increase of the people who did respond, and we applied that to everybody who didn't respond. And we gave them an out. We gave them all an out.
How's it working?
It worked.
You just
Okay, this is
notify them that you have
Well, that was the only pushback we got, was we didn't tell them up front that we were going to do this on the back end, right?
So we got one.
We got one blow up.
But
There
the reason was that that person was angry is they hadn't been told.
Right.
So I hope we're going to do this again and again and again. I'm a Junitarian, so I'm used to getting a bill, you know.
Well, this is another workshop that I would love to do, and there are some really creative, good, and some that probably won't work, models. There's experimenting going on, and I think that that's a great thing. Let me get through these last few slides, though, before I let you go. You're getting some of what I learned from doing this work. This one is actually heretical in Unitarian Universalism. Giving is important for everyone, not every giver pledges. I believe that that's true now, and I believe that it will become more and more true as the years go on. And we need to get this. I think it's generational, and I also think it has to do with the size of the congregation. The congregation I was serving was fairly large. There were lots of disaffected and very active people, kind of all over the place.
Are you saying create giving opportunities outside the pledge drive?
I'm not only saying that, I'm saying that people will, even if you don't ask them, people will give you money because they're there on a Sunday and they write a check, because they read something on the website that was compelling, because they responded to something. Those people, not all of them, are or ever will be pledgers. They may never make a financial commitment. They are nevertheless contributors. And we need to count them. I continue to be shocked by the budgets that I see from congregations that on the income side list income from pledges, from financial commitments, and plate, and maybe special appeal. Where are all of the non-pledge gives? And maybe they're being absorbed into the pledges, I'm really not sure, but those people are real. And let me tell you one real story. We were changing our data management system in the Lancaster Church and trying to understand what it was like to get information on people's contributions, which was pretty easy. And I looked up a family, not for any reason other than the fact that they were fairly new to the church. They had contributed for 3 years. They had pledged only one of those years, happened to be the middle year. I don't know why that was. They gave money in the first year and the second year and the third year. They pledged in the second year, and that was the year they gave the smallest amount of money. The reason appeared to be that they hit the amount they had pledged in March. And then they stopped. In fact, they got a letter from the church thanking them for completing their pledge. And in the other years, they gave more money. I believe that every other religious tradition seems to get this, that there are pledgers and non-pledgers, and they are all part of our giving body. So when I say count all gifts, not just on the tax statement you need to send, you definitely need to show it there, but show it in the reports to the congregation too. And if you're giving money away, if you're taking money in, sharing the plate, doing a special collection, something with money which is not coming into the budget in any way that's going to stay, but in fact going out into the community, report on that. Because those are gifts that people in the congregation are giving to the church, for the church to give away. Right. But far too often we don't even report on them because we think that it's not true or something because we're going to give that money away.
I just wanted to comment that in our church, if somebody writes a check and puts it in the collection plate, we count that as their pledge.
So you make the transition into pledging.
I think we just put it down as their pledge, or towards their pledge.
So we did the reverse. If you don't specify pledge, it goes to plate.
That's how we do it.
Interesting.
Because we share our plate.
Okay,
We
so
don't
we
make a
are
distinction between checks that are put in the plate and checks that are sent after somebody pledges. It's all just
we are, and you know what? I would venture to say that the members of our congregations and the friends don't get our systems.
Yeah.
They don't understand what the numbers we report mean,
No.
because we're not even entirely clear about it. Yes?
In Princeton, we give away the plate.
Yeah.
Unless someone says, this is for my pledge,
Right.
on the memo line of their check.
Right.
But we announce every week that the reason we're able to do that is the generosity of our pledges.
So what if I went to Princeton and went to church one Sunday, which I might do?
Great.
I'm not a member, I don't have a pledge, and I'd like to make a contribution to the congregation. Could I do that?
Yes, you'd have to put it in an envelope or write a check and say, this is not a plate collection, this is for the general fund of the church.
And as a member, as a visitor, would I have enough information to know that I needed to do that?
Well, we announce orally that the plate is given away to social justice and denominational outreach.
And so that doesn't tell me how I can make a gift to the congregation.
And so you would have to infer from that that you want to divert your money from that.
We're going to make it as far as we can.
I just think it's stunning the way we do these things and we make it difficult. Okay, here's another thing that I learned from this crazy guy, even crazier than Cliff Christopher, but I love him. His name is Nelson Searcy. He is an even more evangelical Christian church planter, church growth guy. And one of the things that he says is, we announced the offering, the collection is about to be taken out, and the ushers, lickety-split, are right there with the plate in front of you. So if you were planning on writing a check or even getting your wallet out, if you're a visitor, you probably don't have time. That was such a, oh my gosh, moment, and I realized, and I've now tested it in several churches that I visit, it is often true that I don't have time to do the thing that I intended to do,
Right.
which is to.
But there are people who come every single Sunday and are like that all the time. So you have to know.
Right, I'm not talking
Give them
about.
a few minutes.
Right, and think what would happen. Think what would happen if the worship associate or even the minister were to say, in 10 minutes, at some point in the not too distant future, we're going to take up a collection. And this week is for such and such, and we really hope that you'll be generous and maybe even go so far as to say, get out your wallets now or your checkbooks. I think it would be interesting. Anyway. I'm going to give you this information too, so don't worry about notes. There's a man who is not at all crazy, and I still like him. His name is Kenan Callahan, and he wrote some really excellent books on church administration now 20 years ago. One of them is called Giving and Stewardship in Effective Churches. This is the kind of book that ministers have to read at seminary, and I stumbled back across chapter 8 in this book not long ago, and I was blown away. What he says is there are 6 different kinds of giving in any congregation. So I'm going to tell you what they are. The first one is spontaneous giving. If there had been any share the plate for a visitor is a spontaneous gift. They didn't come that day planning on giving money to the animal shelter, but if a pitch is made, they might well do it. Here's what this is good for. It's good for the congregation, but it's also good for first-time givers. People who are not in the habit of giving money to the church and who are a long way from making a pledge. But this might be the first opportunity they have to put some money in that envelope or write a check. And they might do it because they're, without any notice at all, interested in this good cause. Members of the congregation might do that too. So that's one kind. Second time is something he calls major community worship giving. And this is the idea that on Christmas, on Easter, on grief at the holidays, and I was so glad Christine talked about the blessing of the backpacks, which is an idea I just heard about a little while ago. Have a service. Maybe it isn't on Sunday. Maybe it's in the middle of the week. Maybe it's on the Thursday night before Christmas. Who knows? You are deliberately reaching out to people who are not your ordinary Sunday morning people. And once again, in addition to having them experience your congregation, which might make them think they want to come back on a Sunday, they might actually give money for the first time, which is going to be significant for them. People are going to remember the first time that they give money. And it could be for a special cause, it could be for the congregation, it could be mixed. But it's different from regular Sundays. Then there is something he calls special planned giving, which is not a capital campaign. It's some mission initiative. It's some new program the congregation has taken on, which not only is going to cost some money, but it's going to mean we need another staff person, or we need more AV equipment, or there are some costs here. So you tell people what the project is, and you ask them with good advance notice to make a commitment to this special thing, whatever it is. Major project giving, that's capital campaigns. Kenan Callahan says, and I agree with him, that capital campaigns are actually really good for the overall financial health of congregations because they energize people in a different way from regular giving. And annual budget giving, financial commitments. We've spent most of our time talking about that. And then the last door is enduring giving, estate planning. And here's what he said that blew my head off. He said, to the extent, all of these opportunities potentially exist in every congregation. To the extent that we focus on one or two, we are actually closing those other doors. And we will not get that money some other way. Not everybody is going to pledge. Not everybody's going to give to the capital campaign. But people might be moved by the mission project. They might be moved to give spontaneously. And we need to be aware, as we're doing our that all of those are opportunities. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay. Here's my second thing that I've learned. People give in different ways for different reasons, so let's invite them to give in different ways and for various purposes. Not rocket science. But if we know that people are different and they are motivated differently, then let's plan a variety of ways for them to give. And this is just a little idea that I had. I thought, you know, stewardship and money are so toxic, but there's some stuff we know about membership that we've incorporated pretty well, and a lot of them translate. People come in different ways. Some of them want to be members right away. Some of them never want to be members. Some of them want to get really involved. Some of them want to be anonymous. Some of them never sign the book, but maybe are involved in other ways. All of those things are true about stewardship as well. So it might be a good idea, if it's too hard to think about this in terms of money, think about it in membership terms. And get your membership committee people to think about it. Really.
One of the things last year during our pledge, well, let me backtrack. There's a stewardship lab on Facebook that I'm a member of, and somebody shared a sort of a frequently asked question list. Garrett, I think his name is, the first name. Anyway, I adapted those, and it's about what's a pledge, and it's just real basics about pledging. And so we're going to include that in our new member package.
Great.
Because we have, now we sort of have a pathway to membership, but it is a commitment that you take on when it's in our bylaws. If you're a member of our congregation, you are committing to making an annual financial commitment.
True.
If you
but
can't, then you need to understand what it is.
But what both of these people say is before anybody pledges, they make a first gift. Maybe if we shift some of our energy away from pledging and focus it on first-time giving, which might be $100, might be a major gift for somebody, but that, if we're doing it right, is the first step to making a pledge.
I agree, but I also think that there are some people who get so excited that they come to the church a few times and they want to become members and they don't really understand the commitment that they're making. And we want to make sure that people understand the depth and the breadth of the commitment that they're making when they take on membership.
Right, absolutely. I'm sorry, I need to let you go. Let me just do these last couple. Giving, we've talked about this too. Giving is easiest when people believe their gift makes a difference. Just remember that when you're asking, and this is me being a heretic again, sometimes we need to question the virtue of adapting to what we have and work together more. This is your question. What would happen if we actually didn't just settle for what we have? And finally, developing a theology of money must become a part of congregational life. I believe that pretty deeply. There's a new curriculum which is being field tested very soon called Wisdom Path, and instead of an S, it's going to have a $sign. At least that's what they hope to do. And think of it as OWL for money.
What for money?
OWL, the sexuality curriculum.
When's that coming out?
It is, I don't know when it's coming out. I know that it's just being finalized, and congregations are lining up to field test it. And it's, so probably another year or so.
That sounds great.
It's great. It's great. And I think that what was this idea of developing a theology of money, we need to give people some tools to
Do you
work
suggest to the district that at next year's meeting, they do something on that OWL for money?
I'd be happy to.
A day long?
But I'm sure there's an evaluation for all, and you can make that suggestion too. As you walk out the door, I would hand you some pieces of paper, and there's one of them is a little worksheet with just a couple of questions. And what I hope you'll do is I hope you'll take that and find one or two other people from your congregation and just sit down and think about the couple of questions and see what happens.
Do you have contact information?
Oh, thank you very much. I am moving, so I don't have any cards. But let me just tell you my email address if you want it.
You sent it. Is it what you sent us the other day?
Oh, you know what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have it. It's Tricia Hart, my husband's name is Newport, so anyway, never mind. Patricia Newhart, no punctuation, @gmail.
I just spelled
New is any.
NEWHART.
@Gmail?
@gmail, right. And you all have been a wonderful, engaged, energetic group, and I really appreciate it.
Question about any of this, we should have you as what's going on in our congregation.
And if I think you need lots more consultation than I can give you, I'll send you off to Wayne Clark.